Joe Biden's health became a political football in the run-up to the 2024 election, with Republicans and even Democrats alike questioning his ability to lead. Today, though, there was sympathy on both sides following the announcement the 82-year-old has stage 4 prostate cancer. Cancer touches us all, Biden wrote on X. Like so many of you, Jill and I have learned that we are strongest in the broken places. And if President Trump led the charge against the man he calls Sleepy Joe, last night his tone was more sympathetic, writing online that Melania and I are saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent medical diagnosis. We extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family. Vice President Vance, though, was quick to question the transparency around Biden's fitness to lead.
You know, it sounds pretty serious, but hopefully he makes the right recovery. Look, I will say, whether the right time to have this conversation is now or at some point in the future, we really do need to be honest about whether the former president was capable of doing the job.
For the ability
It was this election debate in June last year that stunned the world and raised serious alarm bells within Mr. Biden's own party.
Dealing with everything we have to do with,
The president had pushed for the early debate in a bid to convince a faltering electorate that he was fit for the job. But stumbling and often incoherent, Biden's performance did exactly the opposite.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence.
Campaign donations dropped off, including from longtime Democratic donor and friend George Clooney. When the president failed to recognize one of the world's most famous actors at an LA fundraiser, Clooney joined the ranks of those openly calling for Biden to step aside.
So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
Amid mounting pressure, Biden dramatically pulled out of the race a month later.
I was saved by God to make America great again.
Yet still, Joe Biden maintains that had he not been pushed out of the race, he could have won.
Knowing what you know now, do you think you would have beat him?
Yeah, he's still got 7 million fewer votes.
Yes.
Okay.
But if the details of an explosive new book on his campaign are to be believed, that is far from the received wisdom inside the Democratic Party. CNN's Jake Tapper details an alleged cover-up by Mr. Biden's aides. The original sin of election 2024 was Biden's decision to run for re-election, followed by aggressive efforts to hide his cognitive diminishment, he writes. The former president has said there is nothing to sustain the claims that he was cognitively deteriorating, while his team shielded him from the reality that he would not win the election.
Well, before the announcement of Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis, Matt Fry caught up with Jake Tapper for the latest episode of The Forecast. He asked Tapper about what inspired the book, Original Sin, which examines President Biden's health during the last presidential campaign.
The original sin was the decision to run for re-election. When Joe Biden ran for president, there was an implicit promise that he would run as a one-termer. And yet he decided, no, you know what, I'm going to go for 2. And that decision, even when polls were already showing that vast numbers of Americans, tens of millions of Americans, had concerns about his age and acuity, was the original sin. Yeah. And from that flowed everything else, every other bad decision.
But do you think that they thought, they believed that, or were they lying at the time when they implied that he would be a one-term president?
I think that it is the decision of politicians in an election, which is like the decision of a car salesman in a showroom. What do I have to do to get you to leave the showroom in this car today? But what they didn't count on is, and our reporting suggests, that as far back as 2015, after the death of his son, Beau, there was a psychic toll being taken on him. And then throughout his presidency, that non-functioning Biden would rear his head increasingly. And by non-functioning, I mean forgetting the names of close friends, not able to identify George Clooney, who he'd known for decades, not being able to come up with the names of top aides.
Jake Sullivan, the former national security advisor, gave an interview to the Financial Times earlier this year, and he said that when he saw the debate performance that you and Dana Bash chaired in June of last year, he was deeply shocked. It came as a complete surprise to him, out of the blue, that the president could be this faltering. That begs belief, doesn't it?
I think it is fair to say that Biden was most animated and most engaged on issues of national security, and less so on issues like the immigration or inflation. But I also think it's quite possible that he was willing to discount or immediately ignore what he was seeing. He claims, for example, there's a scene in the book where President Biden in December 2022 is not able to come up with Jake Sullivan's name, even though he's his national security advisor. He calls him Steve. And then he's not able to come up with the name of his communications director, Kate Bedingfield. He calls her Press. Jake Sullivan claims he doesn't remember that. Does that mean he really doesn't remember it? I can't speak for him. I think the human capacity for self-denial is quite strong.
The Republicans and people around Trump have for long referred to the Biden family as the Biden crime family. Now, that, of course, was deemed to be, far-fetched, typical Trump talk, etc. But when it comes to deceit and cover-up of the president's cognitive abilities, they sort of have a point, don't they?
We do not allege a criminal cover-up. When the Republicans talk about a Biden crime family, they mainly talk about ways that Biden's brother and his son Hunter cashed in on the Biden family name. And there's certainly a lot of smoke there. I don't know if there's any fire. There's certainly a lot of sleaze there. I don't know if there's any criminality. But this might be, and if this is what you're driving at, I agree with you, truly the most appalling thing that the Biden family ever did.
The big thought that occurs to me in all this is that there's an enormous amount of deference in your republic about the office of the president, who kind of sometimes behaves like an elected monarch, and you could argue that the current one wants to be, treated a bit like a monarch. But the deference towards the president, is that what was going on here with Biden?
I'm glad you brought it up, because I do think that your system, because of question time, because of the parliamentary process, because of the fact that if you are the leader of the party and you're not measuring up, who's coming for you right behind you. I think this could not have happened in Great Britain. I just don't think that your system would allow it.